Hello guys and welcome to another patch notes breakdown. This time around I'm joined by Peter Counterfeit Hartnell and Samuel, who's over there. Samuel, say hello, you're new on the show. So introduce yourself to the viewers.
Hey
Please.
guys, my name is Samuel. I'm currently the coach with Gamer Legion up in Germany. And I mean, I'm probably gonna have a pretty different take on patch notes to everyone else. Hopefully, let's try and bring some creativity, right? But I have a background in mathematics. Before in esports, I worked in investment banking. So
Damn.
yeah, I approached the game pretty differently, very mathematical. So
You
it's gonna
know,
be.
I'm looking forward to hearing all about that because we have Peter, who thinks he's an intellect. We have me, who's a garbage shoutcaster. So having someone on the show for once who's actually smart is going to be nice. But you know what, guys? We talked a bit about Yumi before we started the video. So now that she's here, it's 9.10. What do you guys think about her?
Well, I'd say I've only got a chance to look a bit at her abilities, and rather than actually seeing it in play, but she's certainly one of the weirdest champions to come out for a while. And I'm glad Riot are trying new things. It feels like they've kind of got the approach of rework the existing champions to be broadly a better version of what they were intended to be, and the new champions are just the weirdest stuff they can make stick together vaguely as a kit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. She's kind of like Io from or Io or
Yes.
Abatha. She sort of fits this really interesting niche role where you're all about empowering someone else, and it does become a 4v5 in a way. But some of the more interesting things are like the invulnerability. So when she W's onto someone, when she like jumps onto the ally, she becomes untargetable, and that can affect auto attacks that are in midair. So the
Hmm.
game won't cast auto attacks until they actually land on the target. So
Hmm.
Yumi can deny auto attacks, and that actually makes her trade patterns really interesting. I've seen a couple of people play her, a couple of especially Oceanic players because they get the patch earliest. So shout out to Rusty for some gameplay that I was watching. It's She seems like she has very interesting trade patterns that are quite complex. This is going to be a champion that maybe in 2 weeks' time we're going to have a better understanding. But I think right now I've only seen people talking negatively about her. But I think that she actually is going to, over the course of this patch, become better and better as people learn how to play her.
Oh yeah, there's no way that people understand how to play her properly at this point. Like, I particularly like uh, that her ability to attach to somebody doesn't have a cooldown. Uh, that seems like that would be super broken. But
Yeah, it's if you're able to like in team fights jump around from person to person, it's really good. And especially with your Q, I actually have no idea if the interaction works where you can W whilst in your queue. So you can actually change the course of where your missile's going from your W position. I don't know if that works. That was something that happened on the PvE and it looked pretty cool. But there's definitely some elements in her, like being able to jump in team fights with her ult, especially, is really good. I think like we're gonna see her
mm,
paired well with like Maokai's Malphite, someone who can go in, really stick onto a target, and that gives the AOE on her ult actually room to get into a fight. So Kane actually comes to mind as a good example because Yumi will jump onto the Kane. Kane can ult a target, and Yumi will just follow the Kane.
yes, and
And
Pantheon as well, and that kind of thing, and Lee
exactly,
Sin. Ugh.
and Lee Sin. But if you go in with Lee Sin, you are probably dying. Is the general consensus. Uh, that is, you do act as a shield as well. So something that I think a lot of people are underestimating is the fact that in tower dives, you always take the aggro first. And that's a pretty important distinction.
Okay, no, I didn't realize that because I know that she did say that she would take Tower Aggro as the only thing, but I
Yeah,
didn't realize she would take it. That does sort of make sense because I don't know how else she would get the Tower Aggro if you
yeah,
go first.
exactly. Yeah. I believe that she always takes tower aggro first.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, it makes dives really interesting because she can also then W to someone who's out of tower range. It's kind of like a reset, and I again believe that you're untargetable during that jump. So if you
Wait.
time it correctly, you can deny a tower shot.
If you haven't been, because presumably if you can't be, if you're attached, untargetable by everything except tower damage. Does she count as being damaged if she gets if the champion that she's kind of pixing onto takes AoE? Because if she doesn't, then presumably she's amazing at tower diving, because if she just gets executed every time it happens, rather than anything else, then yeah, she might die, but it's effectively just for free.
I think that you target her with your attacks first. So you're like Kled and Skull. I think that's how that works.
That could be extremely broken as well for tower
Yeah.
diving. If you have,
Yeah.
if you're able to just jump on a tank, who could then just take over after.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
wait, that doesn't make sense though. If she's untargetable, surely she's not going to be auto attack before the thing that she's attached to. I don't know. That just seems weird.
Yeah, I think the attached is definitely something that's going to be.
Yeah, well, I for one am looking forward to seeing her more in this patch, and I've heard a lot of good things about her, Samuel. I've heard that she's broken, and as long as you don't turn off your monitor, you should be able to win. Now, with that being said, do you guys have more to add to Yumi, or should we jump to Brand?
Oh well, I think Samuel just mentioned this in passing. We probably should have had her abilities up on screen while this is going on. But
Let me pull them up then.
her W, her ability to jump, like, cause I think people were criticizing that her kit was too straightforward, but I think given that her W, her kind of attached to champion thing,
Yeah, the you and me.
yeah, it only which is a very straightforward indication of what her name is about. Because it has no cooldown if she jumps from player to player, but if she has to detach and then walk over to somebody else, then it does have a cooldown. So, like, her effectiveness is going to depend very heavily on how coordinated her team are to enable that.
Yes, definitely.
Cool.
And
Well,
you mentioned the final chapter as well, like moving that around.
One thing that the you and me doesn't say in the patch notes is there's actually also a cooldown to jump off targets.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to detach entirely. You can dash around as much as you want, but to actually detach from the target, there's a 4 second. I think it's a 3 or 4 second cooldown before you can jump back off a target. So if you jump onto that Lee Sin and he dives a tier 2 tower, you're going into the tier 2 tower.
Oh, okay.
okay, well,
So-
that's definitely something that you're gonna have to look out for when you play Yumi then. But moving on to Brand, he has had some changes on his E. The damage has been increased late, and the ratio has also been increased. Do you guys have, like, what do you think about Brand? Does he need changes? Or is he OP in solo queue and terrible in pro play?
I mean, where to start with Brand? Like, Brand is this champion that in solo queue, it can feel really oppressive to play against.
Yeah.
He has an all right kit. There's nothing like seriously wrong with the actual kit itself. It's very skill shot reliant with the stun setup, but ultimately the problem that he has is he doesn't have a way that if someone jumps on him, he can affect the fight afterwards. He kind of just dies, and unlike Zyra or even to a degree Nami, Soraka, they all have ways that if someone jumps on them, they can get out and still influence the fight. But Brand doesn't. He's very all in with his damage. Does this damage change do much? Not really. It's a nice quality of life buff, but he still suffers the same problems that he needs to take Glacial Augment, and his build doesn't really follow what his champion wants to do.
Yeah, and he doesn't have an escape. So basically, at this point in time, he's just a worse Vel'Koz, one could say.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Well, this is going a bit off topic, but how about if his ult was like a Lux laser that was much shorter ranged, like much shorter range, but projected him backwards while he fired it?
What?
Give him an escape.
Yeah.
So like he just like vomits fire
Yeah.
so hard that he flies backwards.
Yep.
I would be down to play that, but I think the problem isn't with Brand. It's just that aftershock tanks are just really good against him. Alistair is gonna wreck his day. Shen wrecks his day. Anyone that can jump on him and survive is just kind of a problem for him. In mid lane, he's actually not as bad as people would have you think. He's definitely playable in low resources. Again, Glacial Augment is the rune of choice, just because the rune is extremely good at keeping people in the fights, and because you have so much AOE, you can apply a ton of damage and slows with Rallies as well. And he basically becomes a utility bot, but then you kind of ask the question, well, why didn't you just pick Vega? And Brand kind of needs something in his kit that makes him stand out, and he doesn't have that yet.
Yeah, well, I would also argue that he's very reliant on his jungler. Like, if you are against, let's say, Gragas or Sejuani as a Brand, then you kind of want to have a jungler that can attract attention away from the lane where Brand is in, because if you don't have that, then that Gragas or Sejuani is just going to go down and wreck you again because you don't have the mobility.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Do you have another interesting thought, Peter, on how to change Brand?
It does feel like there's a fair amount of crossover in terms of what the abilities sort of functionally do between Pillar and Flame and Conflagration, the W and the E, in terms of like, I feel like the E is a way to make his Q, his Seer, like more practical to set off. So I don't know. I think if anything was going to change, it probably would be his E, just because it's hard. It's not that noticeable to see at the first place. I don't know. It just feels like that's a bit vestigial on his kit. Because yeah, his design is super old. Like crazy so.
Yeah. Well, moving on to Caitlyn, she got her W headshot damage increased, so now she's a bit more punishing if you trap on her or if you step on her traps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's a pretty AD carrier with Brand, so maybe we're seeing a trend here.
Brand Caitlyn bot lane is the new meta. You heard it here first, guys.
Are you saying this was a sneaky move by some sort of Brand Caitlyn duo in Riot? Up the win rate, but just they're doing it like by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah, why not? But yeah, well, like it's not a lot of damage that she's getting. Early on it's 20, and then it's what, like 15, 10, 5, and then 0. So like it's not a huge change, but it'll give her a bit more power if she's actually able to land it early on. And I like the change because Caitlyn is supposed to be a bit of an early game bully and a late game monster. So I feel like you don't need to change her late game, but just giving her a bit more damage early on isn't gonna break her lane as long as it's on her W and not her Q.
I would say if you're trying to make this sound more important than it is, it's a 50% damage increase at level 1, which sounds like a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing with Caitlyn is that she basically always does her job. One of the big things that people talk about is, Caitlyn has a really bad mid game. It's not that she has a bad mid game. It's just that the mid game is after she's already done her job. She's designed to take towers. Once you take the first row of towers, that's typically when you start setting up mid game plays. Baron, river control, team fights, more Drakes. Caitlyn doesn't excel there because she has one ability that does damage, and everything else is like auto attack based. So like the W, yeah, it does damage, but it's in the form of another auto attack. Caitlyn she's not like Kai'Sa. She can't jump in and have 3 abilities that are going to deal damage. And in team fights, that means that she just falls off. But Caitlyn, the damage change to Caitlyn early is going to mean that in lanes that she already won, now she's allowed to do her job faster. Is that good? Well, not necessarily, because you still get to this problem of now you're in the mid game, now what? So she has a place in the meta. There are definitely strategies you can play with her, but she's still not as good as Kai'Sa. She's still not as good as Vayne. She's still not as good as, uh, you know, Xayah. Even at the moment, even after the Rakan nerfs, I would still take Xayah over Caitlyn.
I still hate your snap traps.
Yes, yeah, they are.
Is that all?
They
you
are
have
one
to
of my
say?
least favorite abilities. Like, the thing is, like, I get the idea behind a sniper having, like, traps in the same way that Jhin almost has the same ability. But the way which they're used in the game is just, it's. I really wish that they, like, were more of a thing to protect Caitlyn than a sieging tool. Because I feel like, especially with the extra damage that's going to happen to us as well, that getting caught by one of these feels awful because there's no counterplay apart from just walking around it, which is, I guess, a reasonable counterplay. But you throw, with the amount of snap traps you can throw down, that doesn't sometimes become really an option.
It's the only trap in the game that doesn't have health, as far as I know. Like Team Mushrooms, Nidalee, Jhin, they all have health. You can attack them, you can remove them with swifters. But Caitlyn traps, you just have to step on them. And I mean, if they remove that aspect where you could just clear them, I think Caitlyn would be completely a garbage champion. So,
well, I think if you were going to do that, if you could probably have it so that they were invisible.
Yes. Yeah.
And
exactly.
that way, then you know where it's probably going to be. But like when Caitlyn's like sieging, you know that there's going to be traps every freaking where.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's it's a super feels bad moment when you get caught by one of the traps, especially if you're then because talking about the whole thing where she wins. Like, yeah, if you get caught with a trap and then their support layers all of the CC in the world on you,
feels bad.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Speaking of Yuumi, actually, if it still works how it did on the PBE, Yuumi can clear all of Caitlyn's traps with her W and not get targeted because she can't be.
What?
Yeah, if you jump over a trap with your W, it procs the trap because you're a champion still, but you're untargetable, so you can't take the damage.
That sounds like a spaghetti code.
That is the ultimate counter to Caitlyn is Yuumi. So to live, I haven't played it, but it did work like that on PBE. So
it's Yuumi and a champion who can get on the other side of the traps without just being.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, there you go. That solves all of my problems.
Just become a Yuumi main. No more traps.
Okay.
I mean, me and everyone else. Meow meow meow.
Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
Why not? Moving on to Fiora. Now her W will block Braum and Kennen's stuns rather than preventing them from proccing.
Yeah, that's a bit of a weird thing, but I guess in the edge case where that matters, that's going to be worthwhile.
Yeah. Basically, quality of life change. Do you have anything to add, Samuel, or can we jump on to Graves?
It's very convenient. That's about it.
Yeah.
It's just it brings it in line with everything else.
So it's a good thumbs up from us.
Exactly.
Well, moving on to Graves. His Q damage has been increased late, so it's getting 20 extra damage late, and then it's 15 at level 4. It's 10 at level 3, 5 at level 2, and 0 at level 1. So basically the good old ride of 5, 10, 15, 20.
Well, bear in mind as well, it's not the straight Q damage, it's the second part of the Q's damage.
It's a detonation damage. So if you're able to either have it like run for 1.5 seconds, or shoot it into a wall or a structure, I guess.
Yeah, which is what you tend to do a lot in the jungle.
Yep. It's a nice change. Yeah, it's kind of a change that helps him out clearing between level 5 and level 9. But realistically, it's not going to change how he's in the meta. With the changes to Scuttlecrab, making Scuttlecrab later, we're already seeing Graves come back a little bit, Nocturne coming back, Karthus. So it's nice. As a Graves player, you're going to take it because it's 20 extra damage. Does it change anything? Probably not. He's going to come back this patch anyway, as we see more LEC scrims, as we see more LEC teams go into solo queue. And we're gonna see him come back, but this didn't really change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a small change. Kind of it. Do you have anything to add, or do you want to talk about Massey?
Just in terms of like small damage buffs in general, like I mean, from what I was gathering from most of the kind of the big patch notes guys, the main thinking is that sort of things like this, don't really fundamentally change anything, but encourage people to give Graves another look, which is probably all right. I'm not like a big Graves guy myself to know whether or not that's a good thing that we're going to be seeing more Graves.
Well, he can be a bit of a problem if he gets overtuned. Like, we've seen that in the past, where he's just been a straight up bruiser, and then, like, not necessarily an AD carry, but just a bruiser with a buttload of damage at the same time.
I'll tell you what, I don't know what you guys think about this, but personally speaking, like 5, 10, 15 damage, that's kind of boring.
Do you want him to vomit as well?
I wasn't thinking that, but sure, let's go with it all vomit all the time. I'm saying, if you want people to play a champion, just shove another mechanic into their kit.
Okay, what do you want him to do?
I don't know. I want him to have a stacking system like Rengar, and when he gets 10 kills in, it throws up a age agreement thing, and if you say yes to it, he gets to have his cigar back.
I'm down for that. As a Graves player, I am down for this.
Why not?
I'm okay with this.
Sold.
Just to talk about, just really quickly as well.
Mm-hmm.
Buff also is like, it's quite placebo, and it might actually try to make people max the Q, but your E passive is actually so important to your kit and not taking damage in the jungle that you always max E, and it's just this change becomes relevant at level 13, and 20 damage at level 13 is just nothing. So it might encourage people to put 2 or 3 points into the Q now and then max E, but I still don't know if that's what you want to be doing. Just because the passive on your E is so good.
Let's see. I mean, I mean, admittedly, the win, like the sort of the general win rate for him isn't very high. Like it's sub 50%. It looks like most of the time people are going EQW and then okay, and then looks like they're mostly maxing Q then E. So what's the highest win percentage doing? Okay, so it's mixed between E's and E and Q max.
Yeah, E max is more team fighting. It's better in coordinated play. It's better because you're obviously going to be able to take Drakes more reliably. The damage on your Q doesn't really matter when you're taking Drakes because you're just going to get so many extra auto attacks in. So, this might see a more hybrid max of Q and E together come back to prominence. So,
well, I think that would be a fine thing as well, because that would give him a bit more trading power early on. You would get the passive from the E and you would get the damage from the Q. But a guy who's also very good at fighting early on, Marcy, he's getting a lot of changes, guys. What's happened to him?
Well, I'm not sure. It's like, I think the main thing you would notice is the cast times being taken off W and E is, you know, kind of sorry, not off E, off W and Q is small, but I guess mildly noticeable. The Alpha Strike doing effectively double damage against isolated targets is weird. It kind of feels like we're going back to the old Fiora ult.
yes.
Which, was always a great ability in League of Legends. So I don't know why they want to go back to that, but hey. Highlander movement speed, from what... It's a little unclear, but it's... From what Freak was saying, I think it's a generally... Unless you were getting a lot of... like some real edge cases, for the most part, it's going to actually just be more movement speed than it was getting before.
Yeah, well, I feel like the Q changes also kind of kill the meme about Aus and Alpha. because now you don't have that 0.1 second to cast. Like, I guess, but yeah, like overall, it's not a huge difference it would make to Master Yi. I feel like with these changes, the Q might give him a bit more power in those isolated targets, as you mentioned, Peter. So definitely, it could mean that if he's able to find the 1v1s, or if he's able to go onto a Gromp in the jungle, then a bit more damage will come out.
I mean, this is as good a time as any to bring in, for anyone who's not familiar with the patch notes up coming into it, is that a lot of this stuff is being done in the context of the Guinsoo's Rage Blade being nerfed, and for a little later on, for Conqueror being nerfed as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's worth bearing in mind this stuff that, while there's some of the changes here are sort of power neutral, slightly power buffed, the itemization is going to be, I presume, noticeably worse.
Yeah, definitely. This buff sort of promotes him in that split push role, and something that I think we might see come up more is dropping Ginsu's entirely from the build and just building straight up crit, and then AD and crit damage, and trying to one shot someone with the Q. There were some pretty wacky videos on PPE. I think it was originally 40% of the damage.
Oh, jeez.
And so he was doing like 160% extra damage, which obviously resulted in some funny montages of Yi's one-shotting people. The 25%, it's still going to be pretty good. You're still doubling the damage. And Yi doesn't exist in competitive, for example, because he's very straightforward. He's very linear in what he does. He farms the jungle, he split pushes, he's not great in team fights. But now he actually, it's kind of like buffing his win condition.
Yeah.
And maybe there's now a way in competitive that he can actually achieve that win condition. So I kind of like this change. I don't think we're suddenly gonna see Master Yi's everywhere. Obviously in solo queue, but I think it's still a good overall buff. And the Highlander change now makes Predator work even better. So there's even flexibility for him to take Predator, and that's a very scary thought. That's a very fast Master Yi.
Yeah, well, I can definitely see that being a terror out in the side lanes with that extra movement speed. Did you have something to add, Peter?
I'm trying to remember what the change was before, but Samuel could have prompted the memory of when you've got this whole situation where you've got an item that's quite core to a champion, and they get buffed because that item got nerfed. Then yeah, that's the whole idea that what if the champion you just buffed just switches to a different sort of approach, and you've then just buffed that champion unnecessarily.
Yeah, it kind of happened with Isa when she was released, because then they nerfed Stormrazor, and then she just started building Ginsu's and just didn't care. It happens a couple of times, mostly because there's a lot of undiscovered builds. People it's the hot hand fallacy, right? If a player scores 10 goals in a row, and then you say, are they going to score the 11th? You're going to say yes. You flip the coin 10 times, it lands on heads 10 times in a row. You're going to say that it's probably going to land on heads. And obviously that's just not always the case. And I think a lot of the time there are definitely more than one build on champions, and we don't solo queue competitive, they don't like change, and they don't really think about the change. So Riot doesn't have the data, and they don't have anyone who's intentionally, sometimes it feels like they don't have someone who goes into the game and says, I'm going to try and break this champion. And there is a chance that Yi does this, because the doubling damage on the Alpha Strike, especially because it's, you have the no cast times, which means the big improvement with this no cast time means that you can buffer an auto attack and your Q at the same time. So previously, your auto attack and your Q would be on different game ticks. Now they won't be. They will be on the exact same tick, and that's a lot of upfront burst.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, as well on top of that, yeah, presumably, Alpha Strike was being used to avoid abilities a lot of the time, and not having a cast time is going to make that dramatically easier.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I think that more or less covers Master Yi. So now we can jump to Riven. Now her Q cooldown scales and E cooldown has been increased. So she gets a bit more damage, a bit more mobility with the Q, but some of her mobility is taken away from the E.
I'm just gonna start with this. When I read this the first time, I was like, please no, mercy. But I thought about it a bit more. The E cooldown being increased, I think, might hurt more than people realize.
Yeah.
Having more Qs is great, and it is going to play into the Spear of Shojin a bit more, that she's basically just going to have perma Q after her R. But yeah, that's what worries me a little bit, is that maybe Spear of Shojin just means that the E cooldown increase doesn't matter. And that worries me a little bit, but that's why I'm always a little bit more hesitant to give cooldown changes to people who build Spear of Shojin. But it's definitely something that is going to... I think this has to be played a little bit, because it feels to me like it's going to hurt her laning, because you're not going to E every trade. But I think that she's overall getting more damage at the 2-3 item power spikes.
Yeah, well, just to jump back a bit to you mentioning that E is actually going to hurt her a bit. I feel like having 4 seconds more on your first level of E is going to hurt her extremely at like level 1, 2, 3 and upwards of you getting to 10 seconds again. Because having like 4 seconds where you don't, or where your E is down, is going to be 4 seconds more where you're not going to have your shield. That's going to mean a lot less trading for Riven. So even though you get the extra damage from the Q and that's going to be up more, it means that you're not going to get unscraped out of those trades.
I believe there's some animation cancelling done as well with E. So we get, even outside of the shield and the dash, it's going to be, I guess theoretically, windows where she's useful. I'm just checking to see, like...
The big change is, so originally her all-ins, because her E cooldown was the cooldown that was the gatekeeper, basically. You could take trades whenever you had E. And that's not going to change. So the actual trading, the way that she trades is going to always still be the same. Either with the EW into the full Q, or Q with your E and then stun. The patterns will stay the same. It's just now that she has 4 extra seconds where she can't be trading. And the Q cooldown in lane doesn't change that. She's not going to get an extra Q in an early trade. It's still a 12-second cooldown, or even an 11-second cooldown. But later in the game, when she has those items and the cooldown reduction, that's where it's going to become significant that her Q's up more often. Because her Q allows her to auto-attack every single time, basically. And that's why the Spear of Shojin, when Spear of Shojin came out, Riven's cooldowns have to be thought of in relation to her Q. Because you can auto-attack between each Q. And that's why I'm a little bit worried for this, because if there's more Qs available, she can proc Spear of Shojin more.
Yeah, man, it's not unreasonable to think that she's gonna get like 40% cooldown reduction. So her Q would be up like every 6 seconds. That's, or like the cooldown would be on 6 seconds. That's quite low for a ability like the Q.
I would add on to this, as we mentioned before, that I'm not sure how much of a difference the Conqueror change is going to make for her, but presumably it kind of feels like it's going to be a noticeable, non-noticeable amount in terms of, like, I think it will affect her win rate, but I don't know if people will feel it directly in lane.
Yeah. I think the Conqueror change is sort of We'll talk a little bit more about it, but I think with champions like Riven, Urgot also comes to mind. You might notice it when people, especially against tanks, where you don't deal as much damage, especially with executes, like Riven's ult. But overall, I think Conqueror is still really good on these champions. It synergizes well with anyone that has the ability to constantly keep it up. So, the damage change as well is not a huge change, and it's also a buff to lifesteal. So people that build lifesteal, Riven is now going to be slightly tankier, because the true damage conversion was never better than lifesteal. The lifesteal you would get from the damage. So even though it heals you, it's not as much as lifesteal. And that, I think we'll see that change does. It might make her, or Draven is the one that I thought of. I don't know how it's going to work. Maybe we'll see Dravens go back to like press the attack. But
Yeah, well, those points are good, Samuel. Okay, Peter, I can see you want to say something.
No, it's fine. I think sorry, I realized we got too caught up in the Conqueror discussion.
Yeah, well, Shaco, do you guys have anything to add? They're basically just adjusting his ult so that you just go in the direction of Shaco's cursor, and then you face the clone when you appear, and it's the vice versa for the clone.
Apparently, this was done in collaboration with some Shaco mains, like as in some big deal Shaco mains. So yeah, I feel like any way they can give Shaco power in a way that more is about his sort of trickster identity, means that they can potentially take power away from his murder the crap out of you identity. So I'm all for it.
yeah, definitely. I think that if it is truly, so it helps you in that if you need to gap close with your ultimate, or you want to end specifically on one side, you now control where you spawn, which is great. Because having it randomly appear was really bad. RNG is not something you really want in the game. But what I feel will be maybe bad about this change is that most people have a habit of clicking before they use abilities. And if you can notice which way Shaco was facing, then you have a rough indication of where his cursor was. So it gives you a for certain way of picking which one the real and which one the clone is. So I feel like this might backfire on Shaco mains. And it's going to really, it will play up that trickster identity you were talking about.
I would agree, apart from I suspect the only people who really play Shaco are people who are pretty all in on playing Shaco.
Yeah.
So, in which case, there'll definitely be an adjustment period, but I suspect that once they've gotten used to what they can do with this, then it will just be of benefit rather than a potential handicap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I honestly don't have a lot to add to Shaco, except I hate Shaco. So let's move on to Soraka.
Hooray!
Now, her Q movement speed has been increased in the case more slowly now.
Significantly.
Yeah, if we jump back to, was it the last patch where she also got a lot of changes? They moved her damage to the Q instead of the E, if I remember correctly, because they're tired of like having the E be undodgeable, basically.
Yeah, I love silences. I think they're really healthy for the game.
Yeah, I remember when Riot said they were going to remove all the silencers and then kept them in the game.
Why not just put one on AoE? That seems even more.
That is definitely more fun. The buffs to Soraka over the last two patches have been really interesting. And we're seeing her in side lanes now, not just support. AP mid Soraka, it's really obnoxious. You can never out-trade her now with the W. The way that the Q interacts with her heal now, you almost never win trades against her. And if you have a jungler that can already take good trades in skirmishes, like AoE skirmishes, Kindred comes to mind, you you're kind of like the new Zillion in mid lane. The difference is that you have an AoE ult, or like a cross map ult.
Yeah. She does feel like one of those champions where, like, yeah, given the sort of the changes backwards and forwards, that they're not. It doesn't feel like they've got necessarily a super clear idea of what her identity should be. So,
It's also hard because the base identity of Soraka is very simple. She is supposed to just heal people at her expense, basically. And the problem comes from then balancing the other two abilities that they already do significant damage. And Riot never seems to be afraid of giving supports the option to build AP and be obnoxious or even quite strong. Zyra was played mid for a very long time. Designed as a support champion, came out, was mid. Zoe, designed as a support champion, came out in mid.
Oh man, my heart sank though when I saw them bringing in that, because it's quite a while back now, but bringing in the whole idea of, hey, shouldn't supports be able to build a lot of AP and get some support benefit from doing so? I was like,
yeah. What I would love to give people like Nami, Soraka, I'm just blanking on anyone else that would fit into this.
enchanters, yes.
Enchanters, but specifically ones that have heals. I'd love them to readapt the dissonance and harmony passives on Chalice of Harmony to really have a noticeable benefit. Athene's is really good, and the mana that it gives you, like the extra damage from your mana per 5, is really cool. It's a really nice, interesting way of like looking at the game.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see them add something to it in a way that makes the items more flexible for those champions. It's like Gargoyle Stoneplate. You're not going to build it on an 80 carry, but it has a role in champions with executes or true damage ultimates. Cho'Gath, Urgot, even Jarvan, who just wants to jump in and be a terrain nuisance.
Yeah. Well,
it fits. Yeah.
To take the conversation a bit back to Soraka and to the other champions, I feel like we've pretty much talked about Soraka and we've talked about Enchantresses now. So let's move on to Tryndamere. Unless I can see
wait, sorry.
Peter has
just
something to ask.
Before we do, I was just thinking a bit about her Equinox thing. I'm trying to think, her AoE silence and eventual root. That I was just trying to think, like, what the intention there seems to me, and maybe you guys can correct me if I'm completely off base with this, is that if somebody is chasing the carry that she's supposed to be protecting, she can disincentivize that. Like that seems like that's the idea.
Yeah.
But
pretty much.
Like at the moment, it doesn't feel like it's like tuned in such a way that means that that's like the optimal use case for it.
Yeah.
So I'd like to maybe just see the silence drops off of it, and maybe have it take less time to root someone or something like that, and maybe just last for less time as well, and make it more of a skill check kind of thing, where it's almost like what's supposed to be basically like is more in the vein of a Nami bubble, where you actually have to aim it in somebody's path and they get a choice if they want to go through it or not. I don't know.
Yeah. That's a fair idea. So, let's move on to Tryndamere now that we've pretty much covered Soraka. So, Tryndamere's E is getting a cooldown decrease, and the AP ratio is being decreased as well.
Why does this E have an AP ratio?
That is the greatest question of all time.
Oh man, for such a long time they first had these AP. I remember because I've reading so many patch notes when initially they were talking about the whole idea of like why put AP ratios and stuff, or maybe it was a red post, but like the whole idea that if you build a Sheen, that you don't feel bad that you're wasting AP. That was literally the reasoning for having random AP ratios and everything, and now that's not even a thing. So,
Yeah. Well. I feel like they could probably remove the AP ratio, and to be fair, like it's very niche to have the AP Tryndamere, and like it makes sense that you kind of want to lower the ratio and also lower the cooldown at the same time. But even then, like you're like 95% of the time you're not gonna be investing into AP as a Tryndamere.
Something so on those lines, like because I know people are generally a big fan of being able to build champions different ways to sort of activate different abilities, and I think it's difficult because I'd much rather have that be a consequence of what abilities you level. You know, if everything's got AD scaling, you're like, okay, in this match, this ability is more useful, so I'll level this ability first, rather than having like to go to a completely different build where you have like, because you're sacrificing so much to make that choice, you're like, yeah, with like AP Tryndamere, if it's not super stupidly broken, which is what they're presumably trying to avoid encouraging to return with the ability power nerf on this. But if it's not super broken, then there's no point playing it at all anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, the AP Tryndamere is such a weird concept because your entire passive is based on gaining crit chance. And even if you build like on hit magic damage, it's not like it crits. Like, I don't. It just, there's so much anti synergy in the kit and the ratios that I kind of wish they would just rework all of Tryndamere's AP ratios to AD.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is still it's still a nice quality of life. If your name is Cries and you play Tryndamere top, shout out to Cries. Or
Well, like it's a good change just for the spinning slash, but if
Yeah.
you are an AP Tryndamere, like still, as Peter said, it's not like, or as you said as well, it's not like you're gonna get anything out of it as an AP Tryndamere. You're gonna get like 1 second lower and a radio of 0.2 lower as well. So it's not like it's changing anything except for him just as an AD main gonna have a bit of a lower cooldown on the E, which probably feels significantly better than for an AP Tryndamere.
Easy for you to say. I suppose.
yeah, up to you.
No, it was like just a very small thing that the spinning slash. Well, yeah. So sorry. So Sammy, you're saying like the anti synergy going on with the AP one. The spinning slash gets cooldown reduction every time Tryndamere critically strikes. So you know you're kind of further like theoretically disincentivized. But yeah, I just generally don't know. I don't know. I think actually. Thinking about it, I know the reason why they don't take the AP ratios off, because the people who play AP Tryndamere are very, very vocal about not wanting that to happen. And nobody else cares enough to say, no, we should just get rid of them because it's potentially problematic and it's adding nearly nothing to the game. But there's not enough people who are getting mad about that, he says, throwing things at his webcam at missing. Like, there's not enough people getting mad about stuff that people don't care about.
Yeah.
So I'm mad about this. I'm also mad that critical strike is a thing in the game.
Yeah.
Yep, that's fair, Peter. So, moving on to a champion that sometimes uses critical strike. I remember back in the day when you used to build like a Phantom Dancer and Static Shiv at the same time, alongside an Infinity Edge. Vayne, her R cooldown reduction now scales. So basically, instead of being frustrated about her tumbling all over the place, she is going to be a little less stronger in the early game and gonna have a little less mobility.
Yeah, and we've seen Vayne rise back to being sort of this top pick, and a lot of people, especially high elo players, complained that Vayne basically was supposed to have a weak early game and was winning lane, winning mid game, and then in the late game she's still Vayne, so she still murders everyone at 3 items. The problem was, and I don't disagree with this change, there's nothing wrong with it. What I want to point out is that we've seen Vayne in the meta before, and we've known how to play around her. And it goes back to this idea that people don't like to change. And I think there were better ways for Riot to remind people that you had Vayne in the meta previously. Maybe suggest the SKT 2013 skins where there's SKT where they have Zyra in it, because we saw Zyra as the counter pick to Vayne.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't seen Zyra in the meta, and she's getting a buff, but I'd rather have seen them creatively remind people that there are counter picks. They're just not in the meta right now. But if Vayne's in the meta, why aren't the counter picks in the meta? So it's not a bad change. It does nothing realistically. The cooldown reduction on your tumble was nice. You're still probably going to max W. I mean, you could now, maybe this promotes going back to maxing the Q, but I don't know. It doesn't really change much. She's still decent in lane. She's still at 3 items, a monster. So
yeah.
I think as well, like the nerf, I feel like that looks more of a thing than it actually is, considering how short her cooldown is on tumble anyway.
Exactly.
Like, because you read that and you think, oh, it's takes 20% longer. That seems like something that matters, as opposed to being like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, you're right. It's not like her Q cooldown is very long, but even then, I feel like if you are in a position where you're going to be using your Q around at least level 2, that 10% could sometimes, and I can definitely think of a scenario where that is going to be significant. Like, I agree that it's not the biggest of changes to Vayne, and that it probably would have been smarter to say, if you go for, let's say, a Vel'Koz or a Veigar to try and punish her for not having a lot of mobility in lane, then that would have been a better way of going around it. But I still feel like 20% is a significant nerf in some scenarios.
How about this? So, you guys talking about the way to counter her is to CC her so she can't tumble around the place. How about the creative way to nerf her is just cut out the middleman and have her self-stun every time she tumbles. That way.
But be invisible as well.
Yeah, be invisible but self-stun. That way, you cut out the middleman.
I agree. Like, this is gonna hurt her in those fights. I don't know about the tumble stun. That's maybe a bit bad for her. But area denial was the way to get rid of it. Was the way out from her in team fights. This is gonna hurt her because she now has less mobility early to deal with area denial. But I don't think it's really going to change her play rate. I think people will still play her quite a lot. She's just good into meta champions right now. She's very good at killing tanks, which Riot have been pushing the last couple of patches. Maybe if we don't see tanks come back into the meta as heavily, maybe she falls out. Maybe Kai'Sa is just better. But if tanks come back, I don't think the Vayne nerf here will change anything.
Yeah. Well, to speed things up a bit, since we are nearly an hour into our episode, Xinjiao, what do you guys think? You have 2 lines, both of you, to say something about Xinjiao. So I'm creatively challenging you guys to be short with your answers.
So
that was one.
That's not a whole line.
That was though.
Yeah, that was 2 lines. You laughed as well, Samuel. You're out of lines as well.
Oh.
Right.
Q-Max, not first. So, you can just have a run-on sentence that carries on forever. But yeah, like, he doesn't max his Q first, so this is a pretty significant cooldown. I don't know if no scuttle fights means he's not going to be relevant, but...
Yeah, basically, this change is basically saying, now go level 2 gank, be a Camille, and if you put a couple of points in Q early, you're getting some nice benefits. Does it change much? No.
No, but a lower cooldown obviously means that he's going to have more ganking power early on. Alright, well, Samuel, you've mentioned Zyra a lot during this episode. Now, you get the chance to talk about her.
I actually like this change. There was some inconsistencies with auto attacks and like how much damage they would do to Zyra plant. Last time we saw Zyra in the meta was obviously 2016 Worlds, 2015, 2016.
Yeah, 2015, 2016, yeah.
That's when we saw the Misfortune support come out as the counterpick.
Yeah,
Now,
that
counterpick
was 2016, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 2016 with I'm pretty sure it was. But now that doesn't work. The extra damage from Love Tap or Hextech Munitions now doesn't work, and so Zyra might actually see a small boost in play. I think she's already pretty decent. She has very flexible runes. You can go Glacial Augment if you want. You could go. You can even go Airy, Comet, anything like that. They're all fairly fine for her.
Mm-hmm.
And this change will push her to maybe see some more play. And that's interesting because she opens up a whole new pool of champions in bot lane. So it's if we see her come back, I think that would really change up bot meta a little bit.
I wouldn't mind seeing a Zyra and an Ashe go down in the bottom side again, or
Exactly.
like, even the likes of a Zyra and a Caitlyn, the likes that really enjoy having a support with hard CC. Counterfeit, do you have anything to add to Zyra, or can we jump down to the Essence Reaver?
No, that's fine. I didn't honestly like. I feel like it's a bit like it's just a bit of a historical artifact that they're cleaning up at this point.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But moving on to Essence Reaver then. It's getting 5 extra AD. It's not a big change, and honestly, as they are saying in the patch notes, they want to give more motivation to consider it as their first AD damage item. I feel like it's not going to be that even at 70 AD. Getting the Infinity Edge and then the static or a seal item afterwards. I feel like that just gives you a much bigger power spike than getting the Essence Reaver and a seal item. Like, I can see it on like niche champions, but it's a very slim chance that I feel like it's gonna shake things up.
I want to paint you a picture of the
Okay.
Fnatic cast this morning.
Okay, paint me a
You know,
picture.
Fnatic walked down to their PCs. Actually, they're probably not up by now, but they walked down to their PCs, switched them on. You know, Reckless is sitting there reading the patch notes, and he gets to Essence Reaver and he goes, "Boys, Siv's back in meta. Let's go." I think Siv is the only champion that really benefits from this. Xayah, I guess now maybe wants to build Essence Reaver rather than Infinity Edge first. I still think Infinity Edge first. Xayah is better in most cases.
Honestly, like the power spike you get from the seal item and the Infinity Edge is just
Exactly.
way better.
Yeah. This, I guess now Xayah and Siva both go Essence Reaver. You both buy into the idea of, well, you're gonna buy it, so I'll buy it. And it's still a good item on them. It's still good, but you're committing yourself to a 3-item power spike. And if you look at the other ADCs that are in the meta, they're all 1-2-item power spike champions. Varus, Kai'Sa, Blade the Rune King, Ginsu's, even Tristana is still activated at 1 item. Draven is Bloodthirster sort of activation. If the meta changes dramatically and slows down, this Essence Reaver buff might be reverted. It's probably one of the ones that might go back. But right now, I think this is a fine change. It just means Sivir is more viable.
Well,
Yeah.
I honestly wouldn't mind seeing Sivir more back in the meta. I feel like a meta where Sivir is in is always a fun meta because it just opens up for so many different champions. But another item that has been problematic on some AD carries has been the Ginsu's Rage Blade. Now, that has been changed. So the Phantom hit is every 3 attacks instead of every 2 attacks. And you get more armor pen and magic pen, but it's also flattened. So like you're not going to be able to get up to a point where you're going to get more, or you're going to get less than before at like maximum level? Because before, if I understand correctly from the patch notes, right, you used to be able to get like 6 plus 15.
No, it's scaled from 6 to 15.
Okay, never mind then. So you're just gonna get more more power straight out.
Like you're not getting the most benefit from Gwynsu's unless you're someone like Cogmore can actually use both parts of that penetration. But like, well, they did this in the last patch as well, which is to try and hit areas which could potentially, be bad for the game health, so that they can then rebuff stuff afterwards in a way that was less obnoxious.
But to be fair as well, I feel like every 3 attacks is also fine. Every 2 attacks is a bit much, but if you are the likes of a Cogmore, a Varus, who do have an AS steroid in their kit anyway, those 3 attacks are gonna come out pretty fast, and it's not gonna change things up a lot.
Well, isn't this like the ultimate goal of Riot, which is to just give the ability for everybody to have a 3-hit passive?
Pretty much.
Yes.
I think what this does is this hurts Vayne. This hurts Vayne the most. Is still fine with it. Cogmore is fine with it. Varus is still fine with it. Ultimately, like, he doesn't really. It does screw up his 3-hit auto because now you're wasting a stack on the 3rd auto. But Vayne is the person that cares about this the most, because now she has to naturally proc her Silver Bolts, and she doesn't have an attack speed steroid built into the kit like the Cogmore does. And I think that this, plus the changes to some of the supports we've seen, maybe Vayne does get pushed out a little bit more, but this opens up more counterplay to Draven as well. Now that Ginsu's is better and is better to rush, Cogmore becomes more viable. Cogmore is extremely good into Draven. It does add some nice counterplay elements into the meta, and I overall like this change.
Yeah,
I kind of wish that, like, I'm generally just not so much in favor of trying to get one item to fulfill 2 roles. So, like, for the Gwynsu's, like, it does different things with different kinds of champions, which you kind of like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I think it might actually just not be a good idea. Like, if anything, I kind of like it to be maybe 2 different items that they can tweak for those kind of champions. Like, just split it up into 2 and then have, like, here's your AD one, here's your AP one.
The other aspect is that the 2 passives don't work on champions that, like, some champions want one but don't care about the other. Like you said, Cogmore is really the only champion that really uses both the penetrations and the additional on hits. Akali, though, like, think about Akali. If you told Akali mains they have an item which gives hybrid penetration, it gives AD, AP, and attack speed. Like, attack speed's fine with Akali. They would be like, wow, that's really amazing. But Akali just never builds any. She never builds Rageblade. Even though the passive seems like it would be beneficial on her.
Yeah, you need to be able to stack it up.
Exactly. And that's where I feel like Rageblade is a bit disjointed. And this is, what, the 3rd or 4th iteration of Rageblade?
Yeah.
It's problematic. I kind of like the idea of removing it and having 2 items replace it. Because we don't have any hybrid penetration in the game at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely get behind that as well. Do you have something to add, Peter, as a last note?
Well, I think logically, to further what Samuel was saying, we've lost the AD and AP multipliers on it. Why not just lose the bonus attack speed multiplier? Why not just lose all of the abilities on it and just make it a longsword and then just take it out of the game?
That's also a fair suggestion, Peter. But I feel like we're finished with Rageblade, so let's. I kind of want to take Hunter's Talisman and Runic Echoes in one. So Hunter's Talisman, now Champion's Pet attacks also apply burn, and Runic Echoes overall has its combined and total cost has been decreased. So it's been decreased by 200. It's been decreased by 115 gold.
So buff Elise with the first one, buff Elise and Karthus with them combined.
Yeah.
Okay, I knew you guys would miss this. I'm gonna go
yeah.
the Zyra train.
Oh!
Zyra, Hunter's Talisman. They apply the burn.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
It's
do-
really
do-
niche. but
do you need to have Smite in order to use Hunter's Talisman?
Yeah, I believe so.
yes, yeah, I think you have to have Smite. But I mean,
Well, you could go for what like could
but
you
Zyra
go for
jungle, very
Spellbook?
fun.
Could you go for Spellbook Siren then and have the Smite?
No, you need to
No,
start.
that wouldn't work.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
you have to start looking at the Smite.
I couldn't remember. Yeah, well, I'm definitely looking out for that. And well, our last change of the day, Conquer, and you guys had a good discussion about that earlier on. True damage and healing has been decreased. So instead of at full stacks, it's giving you 10%. It's now giving you 8%.
Oh god, I hate stuff like this where it's. I'd much rather the game be consisted of very deliberate events. So like, this would be something you could activate specifically, and like have that be like a sort of a burst of extra damage and hitting, rather than it just sort of being something. I know that you kind of build up to it and things, but as a side note, I wanted to know what you guys thought about this, because I've seen people on Reddit talking about it quite a lot, which is that Conqueror seems to be too difficult to get right, and we should just bring back further of battle instead. What do you guys think?
I liked Fervor Battle. I really liked the design of it.
As an Ezreal main, I would love to bring it back. The thing with Conqueror, true damage is a really hard thing to balance, because true damage obviously affects tanks as easily as it does, squishy targets.
Yeah.
And with Conqueror, you have the option that full tanks now get to murder squishy targets, and that's like one of the edge abuse cases of Conqueror. Urgot is what I'm thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have champions that benefit from getting the true damage in their kits, like Riven, like Draven, and they already have the damage. This just gives them the right tool to become scarier against things that normally would beat them, like tanks. Press the attack already exists, and press the attack is basically what Conqueror should be doing. The question is, why did Conqueror get made? And like, shouldn't we have fixed press the attack first? Because press the attack is really insane. It's such an overlooked rune just because people look at Conqueror. But I feel like Conqueror is a rune that looks good, it feels easy, but only certain champions really were too strong with it.
Mm-hmm.
Whilst I would have preferred to see other like precision keystones be boosted in order to be competition to Conqueror.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, press the attack I think has only been changed 3 times since it's been added.
Yeah.
So, actually, Simon, since we've got you here, like I never actually got around to really making a video about it, and this is something of a different like question than what we're really talking about here. But I was always trying to push for the idea of press the attack being a support room.
Yes, it is 100% a support room. It is. Yeah, because it's a 12% increase in damage to all damage sources. It's not just your damage, it's all damage sources. And it's... Think about supports that take trades with auto attacks. Lulu, Nami, even Soraka. If you actually activate press the attack, and then your ADC is allowed to fully unload their kit, it's a lot of damage. it's the same as Ezreal. Ezreal with press the attack is really quite good because his Q procs a stack.
Yeah.
So you can auto Q auto, and then you have your W and E, and you are essentially just getting a free round of burst on a champion for very little counterplay. And I think that mathematically, the 12% extra damage is really insane. It doesn't even come close to like Conqueror or Dark Harvest, anything like that. It is absolutely one of the most insane runes in coordinated play. A dual lane, 5v5, but we just don't see it played, and I think that's just a lack of creativity around how the rune is used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if it was going to be put in for support, I'd love to see it be that it doesn't give any extra damage. Like, maybe put it down to like 2 hits, and use it as a form of target marking for the support. That, like, possibly bring the number down, how much extra damage it does, but like have it more easily proccable, but it doesn't give any more damage to the person who set it off in the first place, to make it a support thing.
Yeah.
And then, as a support, your auto attacks mean something in a team fight because you're actually saying, okay, these are the people we should be focusing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's similar to Callista. Like, similar to the Callista W target system.
Cool. Well, guys, we could definitely be talking about press to attack all day, but
Oh, we will.
we have reached the end of this episode. So, Samuel, if people want to hear more from you, and you're over there, where should they be looking, and what should they be searching for?
Yeah, you'll find me on Twitter at MrBaneBlade. don't know if you-
MrBaneBlade.
MrBaneBlade.
Not Mr. Beyblade, Peter.
Bane.
Blade.
Baneblade.
Like,
Warhammer 40k reference.
No, I know 40k.
And every now and then, probably coming up a little bit more, I will be streaming on Twitch, probably
Cool.
doing just some analysis of pro games, stuff like that, and that's over at twitch.tv/Delurva. So,
Oh, you also love cryptography.
I do!
Interesting.
Yes, I did a cryptography course in university. It was very interesting.
but Peter, now it's your turn. Where can they find you, mate?
You can find me at Counterfeit Cast on all the places you'd expect to find a person. Various different social media platforms. I presume that there might be links in the description, but maybe
Yes. Yeah, of course, guys. If you are too lazy to actually type all of that up, you can find it. Their social medias in the description below. You can also find mine. Remember, guys, if you want to see more, leave a like, subscribe, and obviously comment about which of my guests are the prettiest. But yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.